should be optimistic because maybe the long winter of this horrible recession is in fact over. And I've got a couple of numbers which perhaps could give you some heart. But first, let me remind you of the late Will Rogers' famous statement. And he said, as I'm sure you all know, when Congress is in session, no American is safe. Now, you all have heard me say before that demographers are accountants without charisma. But actually, I've learned since the census is only taken once every 10 years, is that demographers are people who only get action once every 10 years. But today, this is my year. I'm very excited. Very excited. Unfortunately, I can't give you any numbers from the census because the numbers for New Hampshire won't be out for another couple of weeks. But watch for my column. I will be sending it to Dave Cummings to put in your newsletter in about 3 weeks, right after the first of the month. And all the data will be out by the end of this month. And you'll hear it from me. Although it probably will be published first in the Portsmouth Herald, since I live in Exeter, and I do read that paper occasionally. I want you to be aware that the census is not going to tell us any great revelations. I know the top line already and have talked about it briefly. Each of you has a one-page handout, okay? As you know, from the past I don't use PowerPoint, but I give you all a one-page handout, and it's in your books. The important thing I want to point out is not on the handout. Not on the handout at all, because I didn't really calculate it until last night. But it's a really important number. One of the jobs you have is to convince people that might call you on the phone or look at your website that in fact housing prices have sort of bottomed out and they're starting to come back up. That's a tough thing to convince consumers of, because consumers do things which I'm sure you do too, and that is they watch the national news. And I'm here to tell you the most important thing for you to do is to stop looking at the national news, because New Hampshire is a very different marketplace. And one of the things you can tell a potential buyer who's hesitating because they're waiting for the market to drop further is that the ratio between median household income and median home prices is at a historical level. It is now bordering on 3. Normally it should be about 4. It's right around 3, which is ridiculously low. And that means that housing is more affordable than it had for the average household, average family, than it has been in decades. And so the idea that houses are going to fall further in price while family income continues to rise slowly, it's not likely to happen. In fact, it's extremely unlikely to happen. So people saying, well, I want to wait until the market drops further, tell them it's not likely to do that. Now is the time to buy. However, and there are a couple of howevers, and that's what's on the page. The 2010 census will show that New Hampshire residents are up about 6.5% over the past decade. That is below the 9.7% increase for the nation. So we are tracking at lower growth rates than the nation. We used to grow faster than the nation as a whole. We're now growing slower. However, we are leading the region by a huge margin. We may be up just 6.5%. Connecticut is up like 1.5% or 2% or something like that. The rest of New England is barely growing at all. People have been leaving the entire region in extremely large numbers for a long time, and it is beginning to show in the real estate markets in other parts of the region. Not so much here in New Hampshire, but still 6.5% is not exactly barn-burning growth over a 10-year period. The 2010 census will show that Seacoast towns, some of them are barely growing, about 3%, but one, Brentwood, is up 30% over the past 10 years. So some towns in the Seacoast area are growing, some are not. It depends on your location, where you are. I didn't want to publish all the numbers, They will be out, and I will make sure that John Rice gets them to distribute to you specifically for the Seacoast towns in about 3 weeks. The 2010 census, however, will also show a marked decline in families with children. This is true all across New England, all across the upper Midwest. Not so much in the South and the West, but certainly here. We are now at the point in our history where in the past, anywhere close to half of all the households, all the people you might want to sell a house to, would be married couples with children. Married couples with children on the Seacoast are now approximately 1 out of every 5 households, 20%. That is also true nationally because it's below 1 in 5 in parts of the Northeast and the Midwest. That's not a good trend for you. Married couples with children want to own their own home. Single people, no, maybe not. And people who are married without any children, well, that's another story I'm going to get to in just a minute. Empty nesters are a major part of your marketplace for purchasing a home. Married couples with children are the next generation. If you look at the first chart, and look at it carefully, what you will see is the entire 25 to 44 age group in this region, in the Seacoast region, is declining, and has been declining for 10 years. That's where your married couples with children reside. And so they are young families with children. And if they're declining, that means that there are fewer of them for you to sell a home to. Right now, there's about 10% fewer people in that age range, 25 to 44, in the Seacoast, than there would be in a normal marketplace. That's 10% fewer young adults who have the 2 incomes necessary to buy a home. So you have a deficit of buyers, and that's important to know. In that age range, however, you have an excess of buyers in the 55 to 64, 45 to 54 age group. As you can see, they have been growing quite rapidly. Those are, of course, baby boomers. Baby boomers are really, really important customers of yours for an important reason. Quite a few of them are getting into the age group 55 to 64 and above, where they don't want just one home, they want 2 homes. Okay? 2 homes. One is not enough. You've already got 2 cars, they now want 2 homes. And so the second home market is robust. And despite a horrible recession, the National Association of Realtors and a number of other people have reported the market for second homes remains extremely robust. And not all of those buyers, by any stretch of the imagination, will come from New Hampshire. So the sheet that's in your handout that says jobs equal housing, yes, that's true, but assets equal housing as well. And the stock market's been doing well, and a lot of these people in their 50s and early 60s think it's time for them to buy a second home, and there are some serious bargains out there in the second home market. There's, I think, someplace between 5,000 and 6,000 second homes on the Seacoast. Actually slightly fewer now because so many of them have been turned into retirement, full-time year-round retirement homes. But nevertheless, they are seasonal in some regard. This says to me one simple thing. If you're going to invest some money in the future in your business, invest it in your website. Because the important thing for you is not just the buyers from New Hampshire, but the buyers from the rest of New England, and the buyers from the rest of the country, and even international buyers. And a realtor's website is your best-selling tool right now, after you, of course, personally. Because a website says to people, I don't care where you are, you can see what we have in the way of inventory, you can see the kinds of properties that we have at the price that you can afford. Why don't you give us a call or send us an email or whatever, correspond with us in some fashion. Getting good traffic on your website will be critical to your future success, particularly because so many of these baby boomers are living elsewhere, and they may want to buy a second home in New Hampshire. Barron's had an article on the 15 best places to buy a second home, and be happy that we were not on that list. The reason that we were not on that list is because houses sell still for prices that the average baby boomer might be able to afford. The 15 places they were talking about, houses only sell for $2 or $3 and $4 million. Aspen, you know, the usual cast of characters. We're not in that rarefied atmosphere, and that's a good thing for you, because that's a rarefied, limited market of only Barron's subscribers, which of course I'm not. I happen to get it for free since I used to work for them. This is why I read it. But the fact of the matter is, it's a good deal. But there's another concept of second homes that I want to talk to you about. I have read more stuff, and actually written quite a bit of stuff, on the fact that this 25 to 44 age group are in no financial condition to be buying homes. Generation X, Generation Y, these young adults are up to their eyeballs in debt, either from college or from credit cards. The banks look at them, you know, with a jaundiced eye, saying, you don't really have much of a track record, you don't have a hell of a lot in the way of savings, but give me a good reason why I should give you a mortgage. And you really don't have the 20% down payment either. But it is their baby boomer grandparents, or baby boomer parents, who are likely to step up to the plate and fork over the 20% down payment, or do some such thing as that. I want to see a show of hands of how many grandparents there are in here. Come on, show me. Show me. Oh, look at you all. Yes, you see? Okay. You're going to have the touch put on you. Not by the grandparent, not by the grandchildren, but by their parents. Saying, now you want little Joey here or little Susie Q to have a nice home, don't you, Grandpa? Okay? And so the play, you want to focus on these baby boomers and understand that they are really important customers. They may want a vacation home for themselves, but you can bet your bottom dollar that they know perfectly well that their adult children are not in as good financial condition as they were when they were their age. And they want to help them and have the assets to help them, and you are of course there to facilitate that. Again, the website you have is really important. Keep your eye on the baby boomers. However, New Hampshire is still different. How many times have I told the realtors, you all, you're different for 3 reasons. We've got a very robust second home market. We have lots of retirees who have moved here, who are buying property, who want to buy property based on where they lived, selling another home. And finally, we have people who have jobs here, good paying jobs. New Hampshire is still 7th in the nation. 7th in the nation in median household and median family income. So we're in the top 10 wealthiest states in the nation. And so when it comes to sell a house to someone, understand that we are way better off than a place like Arizona, Nevada, Florida, etc., where incomes are much lower, item 1, and item 2, there's way, way more just bad, inventory hanging on the marketplace. We've had our foreclosure problems, but they are nothing like what's happened in the South and the West. So you see national figures that include that, those debacles in the South and the West where they vastly overbuilt and are now suffering for it. We are not in that position by any stretch of the imagination. Chart number 2, a key chart. We have an index of economic activity. This is an important index created by the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. And I've been tracking it for quite some time. New Hampshire's is almost at 190. The nation's at 150. We're 25% higher than the nation. This is a composite of unemployment rates or employment rates, manufacturing employment, and a number of other economic things that the Federal Reserve Bank tosses in there. We used to be 4th in the nation. We were 4th in the nation for most of last year. We have now bumped up. We are the highest. We are the 1st in the nation. That 189.3 is the highest index of any state in the country.